When the power goes out in America, you're 72 hours away from chaos. That's not theory. That's from FEMA's own internal timeline. Grocery stores go empty in 3 days. Cell towers start dying after 8 hours. Hospitals burn through backup fuel in less than 96. And here's the real kicker. Over 70% of Americans have no backup power, no stored water, and less than 3 days of food. If the grid went down tonight, nationwide, you'd wake up tomorrow in a society that's already starting to fall apart. No electricity means no gas, no banking, no refrigeration, no communication. Within 24 hours, ATMs go dark. Within 48, prescription meds start spoiling. By day 3, sewage systems in most cities begin backing up. And now you're wading into real danger. The truth, our entire lifestyle hangs on a wire, and that wire is aging, overstressed, and vulnerable to weather, cyberattacks, and pure human error. In this video, I'm not talking theory. I'm going to walk you through the exact 10-day power outage setup I trust. No generator, no guesswork, just what actually works. Because once the lights go out, you're either ready or you're food for someone else's plan. Let's get started. Day 1, the American wake-up call. You might not realize it yet, but the first 24 hours without power is when America gets slapped in the face with the realization we've been living in fantasy land. The grocery stores still look normal. Most people still believe the lights are coming back on any minute now. But let me be clear, day 1 is where the clock starts ticking on a silent countdown that most Americans are not prepared for. If you're sitting in your living room, phone at 30%, no lights, no TV, and you still hear people outside laughing and barbecuing, you're in what I call the pre-panic phase. But behind the scenes, things are shifting. Your local water treatment plant, it probably has 24 to 48 hours of backup diesel for critical systems. If nobody makes a mistake, and if the generator doesn't fail, which it statistically might because more than 67% of backup generators in public facilities haven't been tested monthly, according to the American Public Works Association. Most Americans don't know this. The U.S. grid experienced over 200,000 weather-related power outages every year, and those are minor ones. The real risk? Cascading failures, when one station goes down and the rest of the grid can't handle the load. Just ask Texas in 2021. On day 1, if you're not already taking steps, you're behind. Fill your bathtub, fill your sinks, fill every container in your house. Forget bottled water. Municipal pressure can drop within hours, especially in hilly regions. The moment your lights go out, you need to go into resource preservation mode. Get your power banks charging off solar, if you've got any. Seal your fridge, light up only what you need, and start tracking time like your life depends on it, because it might. Unplug everything that isn't essential. Why? Because when the grid finally jolts back to life, the surge can fry everything from your TV to your HVAC system. And by the way, if your neighbors still think this is no big deal, that's a red flag. This isn't just an inconvenience. Day 1 is your last normal day, if you're lucky. Day 2, where everything starts to decay. Here's what no one's telling you about day 2 of a blackout in America. This is when the rot begins. Not just in your fridge, in your plan, your routine, your morale. The freezer you thought would hold for a couple of days. Yeah, maybe, if it's packed solid, unopened, and you live in Alaska. But here in Georgia, in Arizona, in Florida, let's get real. A study by the USDA showed that partially filled freezers begin to climb above 40 degrees within 24 hours when ambient temps are above 80 degrees. That's bacterial heaven. E. coli, listeria, salmonella, all start breeding faster than most people check the news. If you haven't already moved perishables to a cooler with ice or dry ice, if you could even get any, you're already behind the curve. And let me ask you this. When was the last time you cleaned out your fridge before the blackout? Because by day 2, that forgotten shrimp cocktail from last month is now a biological hazard. Let's zoom out. You think your phone is going to keep you connected? If the cell towers go on battery backup, you've got about 8 hours before they go dark. That's from FEMA's own data. And don't count on the police, not because they don't want to help, but because 911 calls spike 300% during regional blackouts. The average response time balloons, and even in calm suburbs, break-ins start happening. Why? Because on day 2, the predators wake up. They realize your alarm system doesn't work. They realize your Ring camera's offline. And they realize your house, yes yours, looks pretty dark and empty. You want to avoid being a target? Light one room, not your whole house. Use blackout curtains, solar motion lights. You should have installed those 2 years ago. And here's the kicker. Most Americans burn through half their battery stockpile in the first 2 days. No recharge, no solar, just blind hope. Don't be most Americans. Day 3. Sanitation becomes a crisis. If day 1 was about panic and day 2 was about decay, day 3 is when America starts to stink. Literally. No one talks about this because it's gross. But on day 3, if you don't have a working toilet solution, you're sitting on a ticking public health disaster. Your standard American toilet needs water. A flush takes 1.6 gallons. If you've already run through your bathtub water or don't have a way to refill, you're about to learn what it's like to be without a sanitation system. Municipal sewer lines in cities rely on electric pumps to move waste. Without power, backups happen fast. Want to know how fast? After Hurricane Sandy, sewage overflowed into 11 billion gallons of water across New York and New Jersey. In 2 days, you think you're safe in a modern city. Think again. If you don't have a 5-gallon bucket, contractor bags, sawdust, bleach, and a plan, you're going to be making very bad decisions. And here's something most Americans never consider. What are you doing with your used toilet paper after the 3rd day? Tossing it in the trash. What trash? Collections stopped. Now you've got biohazard waste sitting in your garage. And what about your neighbors? What happens when their trash starts piling up? Rats start showing up and flies start breeding. This isn't post-apocalyptic fantasy. This is what happens in the real world every time power stays off longer than expected. Oh, and speaking of water, if you don't already have a gravity-fed filter like a Berkey or Sawyer, now you're boiling water. But wait, how? With what fuel? That jet boil you used on a camping trip once in 2014? You should have bought propane in bulk. You should have had a stockpile of lighters, matches, and yes, backup fuel sources. Sanitation isn't sexy, but by day 3, it becomes everything. And if you think FEMA is coming to the rescue, their own documents admit they expect to be overwhelmed within 72 hours of a major grid-down scenario. Your solution has to be you. Day 4. The psychological fracture point. What happens when Americans are bored, hot, tired, scared, and have no idea when power is coming back? Welcome to Day 4. The mental breaking point. Up until now, you were running on adrenaline. You were troubleshooting, managing, adapting. But by Day 4, the novelty wears off. You wake up sweaty. Your house smells like stale food and candle wax. Your kids are complaining. Your spouse is getting short-tempered. And the battery on your power bank is almost gone. This is where the mental game separates the prepared from the panicked. Studies from prolonged blackouts, like the 2017 Hurricane Maria outage in Puerto Rico, which lasted for 112 days in some areas, show a massive spike in depression, anxiety, and even suicide attempts after just 3 to 5 days without power. Why? Because modern humans are not built for darkness. Our brains are wired for routine, light, stimulation. And when that collapses, so do we. If you haven't already prepped morale tools, books, board games, a plan for every day, you're walking into a psychological minefield. It's also where neighbor disputes start. Loud generators, arguments over borrowed supplies, tension over shared fences. America isn't one big happy suburb. And when the rules of modern civility break down, people become territorial fast. Want to protect your sanity? Establish a schedule. Rotate duties. Make sure everyone in your household has a job, even if it's just keeping spirits up. You need structure now more than ever. And food. You're on rations now even if you don't know it. If you didn't stock 2,000 calories per person per day for at least 2 weeks, you're already rationing subconsciously. And your brain feels that. Mental fatigue doesn't always look like panic. It looks like zoning out, forgetting tasks, losing hope. That's when mistakes happen. And in a grid-down scenario, one mistake is all it takes. Day 5. The return of the desperate. At this point, I need to be blunt. Day 5 isn't about survival anymore. It's about confrontation. Most people who didn't prepare are now running out of food, water, and patience. And guess what? They know you're one of those prepper types. They've seen your solar panels, your stacked water containers, maybe even your generator humming in the background. On day 5, you become a target. In California's 2020 rolling blackouts, reports of neighborhood theft spiked by over 180%, and that was just for planned blackouts. Now imagine this is unplanned. Imagine the stores are empty, gas pumps don't work, ATMs are down, and there's no police response. You think your neighbor's going to stay polite when his kids are hungry and he knows you've got cans of soup in the garage? This is where you start needing operational security, what the prepping community calls OPSEC. No visible supplies, no bright lights, no broadcast. If you've got food cooking, make sure it doesn't smell. Use a solar oven or cook early when the air is cooler and the wind is low. If you're running a generator, consider running it midday when ambient noise masks the hum. And let's talk about defense. This is where things get uncomfortable. Because now we're not just talking flashlights and fans. We're talking deterrence. Barking dogs, motion lights, even posted signs. You don't want a confrontation, but you need to be ready. And emotionally, this is where America's optimism dies. Power companies still don't have answers. The media is silent. Your phone might be offline. The batteries are almost dead. You're living in a bubble and your brain knows it. On day 5, hope becomes a resource. Most Americans have never gone 5 days without electricity. For the vast majority, this is when they'll break down and start doing dumb things. Lighting fires inside, siphoning gas without equipment, trying to go find help in places they shouldn't. Your job: stay sharp, stay unseen, stay in control. Day 6, when the system breaks for real. By day 6, you're no longer in a power outage. You're in a full-blown infrastructure collapse. No trucks, no supply chain, no answers. Pharmacies are out of insulin. Grocery stores are boarded up. Gas stations are drained or locked. And most terrifying of all, the hospitals are running out of fuel. If they haven't already evacuated, they're choosing who gets care and who gets turned away. This isn't theoretical. It happened in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina when Memorial's hospital staff were left without power for days and had to make unthinkable decisions in triple-digit heat. You think America's going to function without power for a week? We're barely holding it together with power. And now you've got people making their own rules. Impromptu roadblocks, community patrols, Facebook militia groups coordinating in the dark. All of it happens by day 6. That's the day when reality sets in. The cavalry isn't coming. You're your own utility company now. Your own police. Your own therapist. Everything you stocked. Every plan you made. This is the pressure test. And it's not just about staying alive. It's about staying human. Because day 6 is when the fear mutates. It's not just about your supplies. It's about watching your elderly neighbor collapse from dehydration. It's about hearing a baby crying next door and realizing they don't have formula. It's about deciding whether to open your door or close the blinds and pretend you didn't hear anything. This is the dark side of prepping no one talks about. It's not just gear. It's moral calculus. And if you're not ready for that, no flashlight, no freeze-dried meal, no bug-out bag is going to help you. Day 7. Silent failures that kill. By the 7th day of a power outage in America, something eerie begins to set in. Silence. Not peaceful silence, the dangerous kind. No distant highway hum. No airplanes overhead. No kids playing outside. You walk to your window and realize nothing's moving. And this is when the invisible failures start stacking up. Your water heater, already cold. Your fridge, long dead. But here's what's worse. Every modern miracle your house depends on has quietly failed without you even realizing. Your sump pump, gone. If you live in a flood-prone region, you're now on borrowed time. According to FEMA, over 60% of flood damage claims in the U.S. involve sump pump failure during power loss. One bad rainstorm and your basement is a swamp. Well, what about your HVAC system? If it hasn't run in 7 days during a heat wave, your house is turning into a slow oven. And if you're in a colder climate, pipes are beginning to freeze. Not burst yet, but getting there. And let's talk about the one thing most Americans forget: medications. More than 131 million Americans rely on prescription drugs, many of which require refrigeration, like insulin, biologics, or injectables. Most people don't have a backup cooling solution for meds. So day 7 is when those people you know, people in your neighborhood, start to get very, very sick. And here's the kicker. Most pharmacies don't have redundant supply chains after a week of grid down. They didn't during COVID, and they sure won't now. Think you'll be okay because you just need refills. The software that tracks refills is offline. Everything is broken. And now comes the fuel crisis. Anyone with a gas-powered generator is starting to run dry. If they didn't treat their fuel or store it properly, it's gummed up and worthless. Gas stations run on electric pumps. No power, no fuel. By day 7, desperate people start doing dumb things. Siphoning gas from parked cars. Breaking into businesses for painkillers. This is when local governments, if they're functioning, start imposing curfews. If you're still living like it's day 2, you're dangerously out of sync with reality. Your setup has to be sustainable, because now this is survival, not just preparedness. Day 8. The breakdown of community. There's a dark truth most Americans aren't ready to admit. After a week without power, community turns into competition. On day 8, that friendly neighborhood vibe, the one where you all helped shovel snow or grill during a blackout, vanishes. You see it in their eyes when you walk by. Suspicion, exhaustion, hunger. People start counting each other's supplies. Why do they still have lights on? How do they have hot food? This is where even good people start thinking dangerous thoughts. And if you've ever lived through a blackout in a dense suburb or a city, you know what I'm talking about. During the 2003 Northeast blackout, looting started within 12 hours in some parts of New York. Now imagine 8 days. No electricity, no gas, no food deliveries. You are surrounded by families who are cold, angry, and hungry. A recent FEMA study found that most urban areas have only 3 days of food in circulation, and that's under normal conditions. We are now at over twice that time without restock. And don't expect the grocery store to magically reopen. The security gates are down. The inventory is gone. And those backup generators they had? Out of fuel or stolen. Now the violence starts to escalate. Petty theft turns into open aggression. People start forming neighborhood patrols. But without communication, coordination, or training, it's chaos. Arguments over street access. Conflicts about who gets to use that community generator. Fistfights. Sometimes worse. And if you're in a rural area, don't think you're immune. You're the new target. You have space, you have fuel, you probably have food. And guess what? You're now the last store in town. On day 8, I lock it down. Period. Lights out at sunset. No open flame near windows. Everyone's on a rotation. Everyone has a job. And if you haven't started rationing, you're in serious trouble, because you're not waiting for power anymore. You're planning for no power. There's a difference. And your mental state needs to catch up. Because on day 8, the world outside your house doesn't follow rules anymore. Day 9, strategic withdrawal. There comes a moment in every extended crisis where you stop thinking like a homeowner and start thinking like a tactical evacuee. Day 9 is that moment, because here's the truth. You may have to leave. And if you've never considered that possibility, you're already behind. Why? Because if your home isn't defensible, if your resources are running out, or if the environment becomes unlivable, staying could become the dumbest decision you ever made. Let's get specific. If you're in an area with wildfires, flooding, or extreme heat and you have no power, no cooling, and no way to contact emergency services, you leave. But you don't wait until day 10. You don't wait until the roads are clogged or blocked. You move when you still have the option. Because day 9 is your last clean window. By tomorrow, the highways might be flooded with refugees. And don't think the government's going to stop them. DHS has protocols, but they don't scale well. In mass blackouts, evacuation traffic jams kill more people than the actual disaster. Remember Texas during Winter Storm Uri? Dozens died in their cars because they waited too long. So here's the question. Do you have a bug-out location? Do you have a map? Printed, not digital. Do you have a rally point with family or friends? Because phones are dead. Do you have cash? Not Venmo, not Apple Pay. Actual paper cash. ATMs haven't worked in a week. And now comes the heavy part. What do you leave behind? That safe full of guns? You can't carry it. The freezer full of food. It's dead weight. The trick to day 9 isn't brute strength. It's triage thinking. What's essential for survival in motion? Food, water, meds, fuel, tools, comms, morale gear. Everything else is dead weight. Most Americans don't prep this way. They hoard. They don't plan for movement. But mobility is survival when your position is no longer viable. If you've never trained for this, it's time to reevaluate your plan, because sometimes staying is more dangerous than moving. Day 10. The end of the illusion. You made it to day 10. But the truth is, America didn't. This is not a blackout anymore. This is a systemic failure. And if you've been waiting for the cavalry, it's not coming. The illusion is dead. The government isn't going to flip the switch back on. Power crews are overwhelmed. Roads are impassable. Fuel is gone. And everything that made your town civilized has eroded. The lines are down, physically and psychologically. Welcome to phase change territory, where people go tribal. Small communities form around wells. Gated neighborhoods turn into checkpoints. And if you think I'm exaggerating, just look at what happened in New Orleans, Puerto Rico, or even parts of California during wildfires. Humans don't rise, they revert. Without power, your zip code reverts to the 1800s minus the horses. And now you have to decide, what's your new normal? Are you still holding out hope for reconnection? Or are you building a parallel system? At this point, your home should already be in off-grid mode. You're rotating power between devices, filtering water in batches, cooking twice a day max, and minimizing movement to conserve calories. Your food isn't, what do I feel like eating? It's math. You are in a caloric economy now. And your neighbors, you better have relationships, or you better have distance. Day 10 is when lines get drawn. Who shares? Who takes? Who survives? I've always said this. Prepping is not about stuff. It's about systems. And now your system is being tested under maximum pressure. Is it modular? Is it sustainable? Can you adapt when everything else breaks? If you've done the work, mentally, physically, logistically, you're calm right now. You're focused. You're resilient. But if you haven't, you're scared. And scared people make dangerous decisions. So let me close this chapter with this. The lights might never come back on. And if they do, you'll never look at them the same again.